Hello everyone, you're all very welcome to the LGFA talk show. We're here in LGFA HQ in Dublin. I'm Jackie Cahill and I'm delighted to be joined today for a new series of shows. We're going to be looking at how to create a positive club coaching environment. So over the next number of weeks and months, you'll be getting a few of these shows, and we want your feedback under the comment section. And if you've any feedback as well that you want to email, you can do so to the man on my left, william.harmon, Harmon @lgfa.ie. So to my guests, William Harmon is a National Development Officer with remit for coach education, and Fiona Kindlon is down from Magheracloone in County Monaghan. Folks, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Fiona, good to have you, and thanks for coming along. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of what today is all about, and William is going to talk to us about exactly what this show is designed to do and who we want to reach with this, can you tell us a little bit about Magheracloone and how you've dealt with some setbacks in recent times? You hit the headlines for unfortunate reasons. A sinkhole in, put paid to playing facilities. That was around about a year ago now.
It's just over a year ago, Jackie. It was actually September last year. It was a huge shock to the whole community, and we were all dumbfounded by what had happened. And actually, initially, with both the men's club and the ladies' club, I'm sure the thoughts were, how will this affect us as a football club, and even with our younger players, will we still have them in a couple of months' time to play football in the new season of 2019? But the men's club, they had a wonderful development group, and they immediately set about finding facilities for us to train in, and that came about just there in the spring of this year. And a local club, Annamalin and County Louth, provide their facilities so we can play football, play our adult teams play there, and we can train and play juvenile football in the training pitches actually that the development club have organised. But we've had great support from our local clubs. Everybody's been brilliant. There's real good community spirit, and we're in a good place so far.
Good, because when you think about clubs and communities, you think about Gaelic games and you think about the club in the heart of the community, and effectively that's where this incident hit right at the heart of your community, Fiona.
It did a huge effect on the full community. Our football club was absolutely affected, and local residents were affected, and our community centre, so it hit our parish very, very hard. But there was goodwill around, and we pulled together, and I think in many respects it could make you stronger sometimes when things like that happen.
So what are the plans now to get back on your feet properly?
Yeah, we will. A lot of things are ongoing to organise a new facility for us. Obviously, where we are at the moment is all short term. The training facilities we have, that's short term. So long term would be to get us a really good sports facility and somewhere we can train and play in the future. So it's ongoing at the moment.
We wish you well.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming along. William Harmon, National Development Manager with remit for coach education. William, we're sitting here today. Why so?
Yeah, I suppose we're all aware over the last number of years, ladies football has sustained massive growth in terms of our numbers and play numbers. So I suppose it's vitally important that our coaching structures and our playing opportunities move with that to ensure that we retain our players that play our games a bit longer. And I suppose the reason why we're doing this show is to look at clubs to utilise this opportunity to probably just reflect on what they're doing in their own clubs. And to see, are we where we should be regarding, how do we know that we're doing a good job? How do we know that we're doing the right activities? How do we know that, we're affecting communicate with our key stakeholders? And if clubs can answer those questions, then they'll be in a good place. So we want clubs to utilise this opportunity just to reflect on their own practice and to see where they're at, because sometimes a lot of clubs would probably measure success on how the senior team may be going, and that could be, the senior team are going well, all's good from the outside looking in, but underneath, when you probably layer back all the layers, things could look very much different. So we're really going to focus on, over the coming weeks, looking at the whole area of the positive coaching environment and what that looks like. And there's a lot of good work being done outside, but with clubs, a lot of good practice being done. So we want people to share their ideas and thoughts, and any concerns or any things they want us to discuss over the coming weeks, please share their thoughts as well on that.
Sounds good. So if you want to get involved, you can comment. If you're watching on Facebook, you can comment under the post. If you're watching on YouTube, you can tweet us as well. And william.harmon, Harmon @lgfa.ie for any of your direct feedback that you want to get straight to William. So today, I suppose we're just going to look at a at things in general, with the overall aim, of course, right throughout these shows of trying to create a positive club coaching environment. So we're going to take a look at, you've got some notes jotted down, the key principles that underpin what we do as an association.
Yeah, I suppose before we kind of progress on, we have to probably take stock of where we're at and what are the key, I suppose, coaching principles that I suppose underpin what we do. So underpin why we do what we do, and I think that's key. And for clubs out there, I suppose that's one thing we need to be very clear on, is why are we doing what we're doing. And at the end of the day, we want more girls playing our game, we want more girls staying in our game. So that's we in LGFA probably took stock in that and looked at we have a principle called the Freeda principle, which we'll go through individually now regarding same.
So that's FREDA.
FREDA. So F for fun and enjoyment, R for relevance, E for excellence, D for direction, and A for active, and it just gives us a bit of clarity on where we want in our direction, in our destination, where we want to go as an association. So I think that's the first learning point from today. I think we have to have clarity on what is it we are about, and sometimes that probably gets muddy watered. So just clarity on where we're going regarding the same.
So Fiona, in a club setting, and you featured in one of our videos last year in the Magheracloone club, and you made some very, very interesting and relevant points. And one that struck me particularly was the fact that you don't necessarily want the underage teams to be tearing it up and stacked with high-level players. It's more about an overall look and giving each and every girl a chance to play.
I think that's very important, Jackie. And in our club, we have 3 schools in our parish, and we would be considered a big enough club. And we have a large number of players that play football between 8 and 12, averaging. Well, every year we gain extra players, and we think one of the reasons is our club ethos. We feel very passionate about players on their last year under 12 playing. That they start every game, and then we mix and match as the game progresses. Everyone gets a run, and the way the competition is designed in Monaghan, there's 3 minutes, so there's plenty of time for every player to play. So it's not that we're not competitive. We are competitive, but we are not competitive at all cost.
That's the key.
That's the key for us. It's about, it's about, I suppose every club has to ask themselves what's their definition of success, or what do they measure it on? And in our case with our club, we would love to think that we could develop, give every girl a chance and be successful. I mean, that would be a huge thing. But being successful with having a large number of players at the start of the year and still having those large numbers at the end of the year, success with us.
Okay, Fiona, just on your own background and how you got into coaching, obviously your playing career, maybe just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm playing with Magheracloone from the very beginning. My father Morris was our first coach, and he made it possible for us to have ladies football in Magheracloone, and Niamh obviously got on very well in relation to ladies football, so we were very much part of the club from day one, and we quite early, I suppose, after we finished playing, we had a great interest in to go back and coach, and I suppose even with us 3 here, we all can remember a coach that we've had, and the effect that coach had on you may have shaped you, and you'll always remember how a coach makes you feel. And we had great coaches. We were very blessed. Every coach I ever had was a great coach. You'd learn something. And I feel personally, for coaching myself, that I just like to think you'd leave a positive impact on every player you meet. So we just have a great interest in coaching. And it was something we always wanted to do, and keep the club strong and have the club still in existence, which is now 30 years later the club is going, and for it to continue to go and grow. And
the ultimate aim, of course, Fiona, is to try and get in time a successful senior team.
Yes, absolutely. Like the very brief story with us was that in 2013 we were, as Will said earlier, like you kind of a very successful senior club, and we were competitive and we were holding our own. But we had no player from 14 back playing football at all. So in 2014, a few of us said, right, let's start this. We had coached prior to that several times, but we wanted to get quite serious. So that's why we went into our 3 schools. And then in no time, we had 47 players playing that year from 8 years of age to 12. We were our first ever under 10 team. We had great help from the LGFA with the Gaelic for Girls programme, which is fabulous. It's something clubs should consider doing. and it's been growing since. Been every year since.
And just on that point made by Fiona, and we do a lot of research, Jackie, in terms of, we have to find out why our players, want to get involved and why they want to stay involved. And we've done various research with our Gaelic for girls, with our Gaelic for teens, with our under 17 academy players, with our under inter-county players. And one of the big aspects in terms of why players, a big influence is coaches, and quality coaches and that connection. So that's, if we go back to the Freeda principle and look at the number one is fun and enjoyable and have values. And we speak about values, and values really are qualities and standards that drive behaviour. So it's very important, and that's probably one of the key learning points from today, is that whoever you get involved in your club have the same values that you have as your club in general, and everybody singing off the same hymn sheet, and that's important, because coaches have a huge impact if a girl wants to stay involved or not. So that's just an important point regarding same, in terms of having the right values and having the people that fit into the values of the overall club as well.
So William, and Fiona, is it fair to say then that if you get these good practices and principles applied at a very young age, it helps to create a culture that lasts right through the various grades and into the adult grades?
You hit the nail on the head. Culture. And I suppose hopefully today, even if today just gets you to reflect and say where you're at, and if there's need for changes as outlined by Fiona, in terms of principles are the rules and your beliefs that govern your actions. So having clarity, going back to the Freeda principle, we're clear from an LGFA point of view on where we see the whole thing going, from a coach education point of view, from a initiative point of view, Get It for girls, Get It for teens, from a player development point of view. We're very clear on where we want to go, and as a result then, we will be able to put the right policies and procedures in place. So going back to that fun and enjoyable, just to wrap it up in terms of being inclusive, players of all abilities, whether it be a player with a disability or a player of exceptional ability, how do we look at that? How do we make sure that things for our players are challenging, but in a fun and enjoyable environment? And going back to the point of competition is part of the development, and we say that girls can, you can enjoy yourself being competitive, and that goes down to the relevance, that it's the process out of the outcome. If you get the process right, so you have the right coaches, the activities they're delivering are age appropriate for the age group you're dealing with, that it's very player centred, that the player is always in the centre of your decisions, then you more than likely will achieve success. What that looks like, we don't know, but if you have all the building blocks in place, you will more than likely achieve success. And in the subsequent shows, we'll go into more detail how ones can go about that. But I think we're clear on success. What is success? And I think if you're clear on, if you feel that winning trophies is the end all be all, then I think a lot of people will be disappointed, because only one team can win. So, if you measure yourself on success, then that could be, and I know a lot of coaches out there, a lot of coaches are under pressure, because if they don't win, or if they don't win a trophy, they deem themselves to be unsuccessful. However, if the club have clarity in what they're about, then that pressure should not be there, because they know that the coach is abiding by what they're trying to achieve. Players are staying involved in their game, which is most important, and if players come back the next session, then that's success to us.
Well, just maybe talk to us briefly about the next number of shows and the key considerations that we're going to look at. We kind of like to look at today as an introductory piece. And again, to viewers and listeners on the podcast, all of your feedback is most welcome. So maybe just talk to people about what we can look forward to over the next number of shows.
One area we'll be looking at is the whole area of leadership, and how do we get people to probably follow, to buy into what you're trying to achieve. And I suppose if you're going back to the Freeda principles, we're looking at the whole area of excellence and direction. And what we mean by that is that, can we create a culture where your club can be the best they can be? And I suppose that's the questions we keep going back to. How do we know we're doing a good job? How do we know we're doing the right activities? How do we know we're communicating effectively? But you can create a culture of high standards, everything every day, so every session. But the direction is the big one, and the leadership, you need leadership to buy into that. So the people who drive it from the club perspective, and I think that's important that their leadership is shown, to have a clear focus. So what is that clear focus? What is the club about? And having that vision, and always having the bigger picture in mind in what we're trying to do, and that long-term development. Because if you have that in place, if you have your leadership, you have a clear idea on where you want to go, then it will assist you with any challenges that you may have throughout the year. For example, a coach going, not going where you wanted to go, then you can always bring it back, and you can take the personalised situation out of it because you have clarity on what is the club about, what is the expected behaviours, and then it'll help you with any challenge that you may come. I don't know, Fiona, would you have experienced that in your club, that, you know, from having that clarity in what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I was actually going to. Sorry, I was just going to say that I had a call from a club this year who had a great interest in putting in a second under-12 team, because we've been putting in 2 under-12 teams into competition for the last 3 years because of the numbers. And I said, well, we have names, we call them lions and tigers, first of all. And that's because it's very hard to differentiate between the courage and the strength of a lion and a tiger. So both teams offer that. And I said, our eldest players, or the girls in their last year under 12, they're our lions, assisted by our older 11-year-olds. And then the tigers are our development team. And he was shocked by that. He said, how can you do that? How can you be successful or even competitive if you're just going that way? Is not which of them are your best team? You know, so I was saying, like, we can't judge. You can't judge a player at that age so soon. You can't decide she's weak, she's strong. You know, there's natural players that will come with very natural talent from the very beginning, but there are players, if you just give them a chance and give them confidence and instill that confidence in them, it's amazing what they can achieve. Do you know, so it's difficult sometimes for everyone to absolutely buy into it. I'm not saying for a second that clubs will find this easy if they decide to use this ethos. Players will get it quicker. Children will get it quicker than adults. They really will. And interestingly, our first ever under 10 team in 2014 was our Division 1 under 14 team last year. So they have gone on now and they're competing in Division 1. And that is the goal and the dream in Magheracloone, that all our teams will eventually be playing Division 1 football right across the teams.
I have Cubs jotted down as well. Is there Cubs? Oh, yeah. So like, I wanted to ask you about that, and it's great you've brought it up, Fiona, but the Tigers and the Cubs.
Yeah, so our Cubs
so
are
the Lions,
under
the Tigers
10s.
And the Cubs, yeah.
I was texting actually when we were sending WhatsApp to the parents. There was one mother, her child was a Cub, a Tiger and a Lion. She had a child in each team, and she said, unless my phone beeps 3 times, then I'll know when training's on. So she had a player on each of the teams, but it was just for that reason. We didn't want any superiority or inferiority. It's, you know, at that it's the youth. We're dealing with such young people. It's so important that no one feels inferior, and they've all got something to offer. And I can't give you a stat, I don't have a percentage on it, but there's a large number of players currently in our club playing under 14, under 16. And actually we had our first ever minor team this year, first minor team in years. And they are the direct product of under 12s getting a chance. Do you know, they have offered something to the under 14, under 16 team. And if we'd been ruthless, and if we had gone after the strongest and kept our panel small, we may not have fulfilled our 14 and 16 teams. Do you know? So that's important.
I think there's 2 key points there, is the patience. I think that's another key learning point, is the patience of clubs. If you want to change culture, if you want to change how you go things, then it's going to take time. I know I'm a coach for my own club. It takes time, you know, if you want to just try to change how you go about your system. And it's not linear. So it's not going to be great from day one all the way. It's not going to be a linear process. You're going to have challenges and situations, but if you're clear on what you're trying to achieve, then it'll assist with that. And I suppose, the second point I'd like to make is the long-term development. It's always about 5 years down the road, not just now. It's about 5 years down the road, but having that patience, say, listen, we have clarity on where we want to go, the direction we want to take this. Okay, we can see from Fiona's example that 4 years later, they have now got a minor team, where a few years ago they didn't have a minor team. So I think that's a fantastic example. But I suppose if you want to embed culture, and the final point in terms of the Freeda principle, you need to be regular in what you do. You need to have repetition. So when you have clarity around your values, your philosophy and your policy, then you need to be repetitive in what you're trying to do, because constant repetition will kind of embed culture in the club. So you keep going back to that. You keep going back to, listen, this is what we're about. So if anybody starts to go off in their own tangent, you can always bring it back to what you're agreed to start it. So I think they're just vital points you made there, Fiona, in that patience, long-term development, but having a clear focus where you want to go.
But there's a big difference between repetition and becoming boring, William. So how do you manage that balance?
And that comes down to embedded culture. I suppose there's 3 words I'd like to probably put out there is your planning, your doing, and your reviewing. I like a lot of clubs to reflect on those 3 areas, if you don't mind. And I suppose when we look
You're challenging people today.
You're challenging. So, like, I'd be asking clubs out there, look, how much emphasis do they put on their planning? So I know a lot of clubs are finishing their club season presently, and a lot of clubs say, wind down, job done, geez, everything is done, we're back again in next March. Where I would actually say, no, now's the time to start thinking about next year. Now is time to start thinking about, reviewing what you did for the year. What went well? How can we improve? And if we were to do this next year, what would look different? And that will continually challenge, because if you have something to measure off, so if you've got your current values and your policy, you have something to review and measure off. So now you're getting people engaged, and you can amend your policy for next year. So that's one key, and that keeps people buying into it. And you'll notice the conversations in year 1 being very basic, but you'll notice in year 2, year 3 how the conversations will start to develop. You'll be talking about player pathways and everything. It's amazing how it does develop because of that constant planning, doing and reviewing. And I just think the planning phase is vitally important in terms of embedding a culture and the doing and the reviewing. So also now is the time to be looking at your coaches for next year. Sitting down and looking at, well, who's going to be involved next year? And you're setting the standards. So you're not waiting for people to come. You're going, listen, who is it that we want to get involved in X, Y, and Z? And I know in my own club, we have a scenario whereby we have the head coach and we have assistant coaches. So the head coach is the lead of the group, and he's the assistant coach. He or she is the assistant coaches with them. But we're looking at that now, so that when it comes in January, February, we're sitting down and we're starting with the running, shall we say. So that's just an important point to make regarding that, and that's something we look at in the coming show. Is how do you look at your values, how do you put a policy in place? And I think that's the next show we will really look at. That is so for example, if you have players who are playing multiple age groups, how do you deal with that? How many coaches should you have per player? So we in our own club, we have the ratio is 1 to 8. So if you have 8 players, you should have at least 1 coach. If maximum is 1 to 10. Okay, so how does that look? So there's scenarios like that, and you need to sit down and say, well, what if this happens? This is how we're going to deal with this scenario. And I think it helps with challenges going forward.
Something nice, I think, to touch on as well, and I'm sure you factored it in, is how you deal with coaching different grades, because obviously you coach kids, you're involved with the Laois senior footballers in recent times, so it's different messages for different groups.
And goes back to our Freeda principle. If you go back
to underpins everything.
It underpins in terms of age appropriate. So, coaching boys is different to coaching girls. I'm not saying that boys are better than girls. I'm saying coaching boys is different to coaching girls. So there's a different approach. So I think people need to understand that, because if you understand why girls are coming in the gate, I think you'll coach accordingly. And also, coaching under 6 is different to coaching under 16. But again, you probably won't be having those in-depth conversations in year 1. Year 1, you'll be looking at what are our values and what are the 2 or 3 things we need to do to ensure that we achieve that throughout the year. But by year 2 or 3 or 4, you'll be looking at these conversations by, okay, well, what should we be doing on the 6s, the 8s, the 10s, the 12s? That's where your conversation will evolve. And you'll find that your club will no longer be dealing year to year. You'll be actually just you'll be evolving like coaching should. And coaching will always change. And coaching will be, I suppose, determined by the research that's out there, but also from your experiences. The best way to learn is get out there, try what you've put in place, and learn from your mistakes. That's the key to the whole thing. Really.
You mentioned a couple of initiatives, Gaelic for Girls and Gaelic for Teens, and just to let people know as well that applications for the 2020 programmes are now open as well. Go to our website, ladiesgaelic.ie, for more. Fiona, you might talk to us about how Gaelic for Girls in particular impacted on Magheracloone. I know you've touched on it previously in the conversation, but just a little bit more in depth.
It was just the guidance from the LGFA, the programme itself. It was you didn't have to, the child didn't have to necessarily be immediately affiliated with a club. It was a case of just going out and finding the girls in your parish, and the incentive at the end of it was a trip to Croke Park. I think that at the time, it may have changed slightly now. So yeah, we got a wee trip to Croke Park out of it, so it was great. It was, there was blitzes organised, and it was all non-competitive, obviously. It helped us, it helped us because, as I say, we didn't have any players. under 14 at that stage in 2014. And even though when we looked into it, the players were in the parish, we just had forgot to go and get them. And that programme from Croke Park was brilliant. I think it's since changed though, hasn't it? There's a slight angle change on it, but we were very glad of it in 2014 for sure.
And just in relation to the Gaelic for Girls, Gaelic for Teens, I suppose what we've kind of really, with the coach education framework we're trying to put in place, the emphasis is really on the coaching, quality coaches, and how can you support your coaches on the ground to ensure that they're delivering the right activities. So again, going back to our research, if coaches have a huge impact in our players getting involved and staying involved in our game, then it's vitally important that our coaches are clear on what they're trying to do. So that's kind of what the Gaelic for Girls, Gaelic for Teens programme looks at regarding same. But going forward, look, we'll be hitting on other things like effective communication. I would ask clubs out there, how many times do their coach sit down and discuss coaching in their club? Do the under 6 coaches do their own thing? Do the under 10 coaches do their own thing? Do the under 16 coaches do their own thing? Do they ever sit down once every 2 months and say, listen, well, how are things going? How are we going with our policy? Is there any challenges we're coming across? And I think that's one thing that we forget about, is that everybody has a key role to play in the bigger picture. So effective communication, and it's something we look at in the coming shows regarding, even with parents, because in order for, I suppose, to embed the culture, everybody needs to be, I suppose, understanding of what is you're trying to achieve, bigger picture. And that's not just the players, that's the coaches. And that's the parents as well, and the club as a whole. Well,
I'm sure a lot of people would like to hear as well, Fiona, from how to effectively communicate messages to kids in a proper way, not in an aggressive way or a way that they might just say, "Whoa, this isn't for me." It's quite important that you foster people within the club that are of that nature.
From we currently delivered, I know, Fiona, you might give your feedback on that in terms of our level 2 and our level 1 and our Gaelic for Girls and Gaelic for Teens. And one key aspect we really hone in on is the whole area of player engagement. So moving away from telling to engaging, asking the player for their engagement. I suppose sometimes we feel that we have to tell the players X, Y, and Z. So that player engagement is a huge aspect, and it's probably going to be one show that we'll probably focus on coming up in direct involvement. How do we improve engaging with players? How do we involve them in our activities? And when you involve someone, they'll feel part of it, they'll feel valued, and they want to come back. And in terms of coaching girls, that's one key area. And I know Fiona did her level 2 recently. If you want to give it probably a bit of feedback on how you found that area.
This man was one of the reasons of its success. Level 2 was a fantastic course, and I hope anyone that gets through level 1 should definitely consider doing the level 2 course, because it stripped right back to what it's all about. It was just the key components of coaching, what's important about coaching, as you say, the reviewing and reflecting and not moving on from a drill until you absolutely nail it. We learned so much. It was so basic and very, very education, very important. Just going back to about the importance of asking the players. Players are very smart. The kids we have are under 10s, under 12s, and they listen to the language of the coach. So sometimes we'll say things to encourage them, and then you'll hear them repeat it. And they'll say it to we might get the children that aren't starting, encourage the players that are playing, and they'll shout out things that they've heard you saying. So players listen very carefully to what the coach is saying, and they're very smart. I think we would regularly at half-time in a game ask the players, what do you think is happening? What do you think we need to change? We're standing here, we're static, we're not playing, you're playing. It's always a different view from the player that's playing, and we give them a lot of responsibility, and they respond to it. They like to be asked how they think their game is going.
I love that word. I love that word, encourage, and you've said it twice during that piece. Fiona, where the half hour's gone, William. As these things tend to happen, it just rattles along like that. So, folks, what we've given you here is a broad overview of what we're going to be chatting about over the next few shows. William, any final brief closing thoughts before we end this week's show?
Definitely. I think today was just general. We just touched on things briefly, but over the coming shows, we like to go into things in more depth. And as I said, in terms of how do we get that leadership going, how do we look at values and policy, how do we look at getting more quality coaches, how do we look at effective communication, and how do we promote reflection and repetition. Well, we'd love for clubs to probably, email email in or share their thoughts. And there's a lot of good practice going on in clubs too out there. We want to hear your thoughts on what's being done in this space. And if you have any questions or queries regarding, if you want any feedback or advice on certain aspects, please email in, because we'd like that to probably inform what we're going to be doing going forward. But today was just a general overview. We hope you enjoyed it, but we'd like you to engage now between here and the next show, and we'll go into those areas in more detail.
Yeah, so if you can get your questions in, we'll put them to our panel on the next show. William.Harmon@lgfa.ie is the email address. So like, share, comment across social media. William Harmon, National Development Officer with Remit for Coach Education, thank you. And Fiona Kindlon, thanks for coming down. That's been the LGFA Talk Show for this week. Over and out. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.